In this video, we're going to go over properties of real numbers. All right, here's our vocabulary. Opposite or additive inverse. These two words can be used interchangeably. They mean the exact same thing. Just like roads have two different names, this has two different names. If I say opposite or additive inverse, I'm talking about the same thing. What it says the opposite or additive inverse of any number A is negative A. So basically, if I give you 1, that's your A, the additive inverse would be negative 1. All right? The opposite or additive inverse of any number is you just simply change the sign. So like if I gave you negative 3, the additive inverse would be 3. Easy way to tell, when you add them together, you should always come out with 0. So you have negative 3 and 3, you have 1 and negative 1. I could give you 10, the additive inverse would be negative 10, because when you add those together, you're still going to come out with 0. Now make sure if you use additive inverse, make sure you're calling it additive inverse and you don't just say inverse. Inverse is kind of a generic term. You have to know which one you're talking about. Reciprocal or multiplicative inverse. Okay? Of any non-zero number, A is 1 over A. So like if I give you, say, 3, your additive inverse is going to be 1/3. If I give you 2/3, your multiplicative inverse. If I give you 2/3, your reciprocal or multiplicative inverse is now going to be 3 over 2. Now, an easy way to check multiplicative inverse, when you multiply a number with its reciprocal or multiplicative inverse, you're going to come out with 1. So here, 3 over 1, 3 times 1 is 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 over 3 reduces to 1. This here, 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 over 6 reduces to 1. So, opposites or additive inverses will always add to 0, and reciprocals or multiplicative inverses will always multiply to give you 1. All right, they can be negative as well. So like negative 1 over 5, the multiplicative inverse would be negative 5, because when you multiply those together, you are going to get 1. Negative 1/5 times negative 5 is 1. So they can be positive or they can be negative. Opposite or additive inverse, you're going to have one of each. Multiplicative inverse, they're going to have the same sign because they have to multiply to give you 1. All right? Moving on. Make sure you have that vocab in your notes. You're going to need it in your notes. All right, this is going to be kind of a short video because we're already on our last topic. Let me use green. All right, real numbers. All right, you have real numbers and you have what's called imaginary numbers. For right now, we're gonna stick to real numbers, but real numbers can be broken down into 2 different categories. You have rational numbers and you have irrational numbers. Okay, rational numbers, they can be broken down as well. At the very basic level of rational numbers, you have pretty much every number that is either, say, a whole number like 1 or 2. You have fractions, 1/3, 4/5, and you also have terminating decimals like 0.025 or maybe 0.3. And you also have repeating decimals like 0.33 repeated, because again, that is just simply 1/3. All right, so you start off with rationals, you have whole numbers, fractions, and terminating or repeating decimals. Now, that can be broken down as well. Your next group, now keep in mind, everything kind of in this box here is a rational number. We're just getting more and more specific as to what else to call them. Okay? Our next group are integers. Integers are things like -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. All right. If you notice, integers don't have decimals, but integers do include negatives. We can take this a step further and go to whole numbers. Whole numbers start at 0 and go to positive infinity. All right, as you can see, integers go from -infinity to infinity as long as you don't have decimals. Whole numbers start at 0 and go to positive infinity. And again, there's no decimals, hence the name whole numbers. Now, whole numbers can be broken down one step further into what's called natural numbers. Now, natural numbers are also sometimes referred to as the counting numbers because they start at 1 and go to positive infinity. So the only difference between natural numbers and whole numbers is the 0. Natural numbers do not have 0 or include 0, whereas whole numbers include 0. With integers, you throw in the negative numbers, and with rational numbers, you throw in fractions, terminating decimals, and repeating decimals. Now, a rational number could also look like, say, the square root of 4. Because think about it, the square root of 4 is just positive or -2. Well, positive 2 is an integer, a whole number, and a natural number. -2 is also an integer. Okay? So you can even have square roots in the rational number system. Now, with irrational numbers, you have numbers like pi, because pi doesn't repeat and it goes on forever. I mean, I've seen people take that thing to 1,000 decimal places. They obviously got a lot of time on their hands. But you also have stuff like the square root of 2, square root of 3, because these come out to non-terminating decimals and non-repeating decimals, because a decimal can go on forever, but if it repeats, it can be written as a fraction, and therefore it's a rational number. Okay? So like if I wrote down like 1.1213576 yada yada yada, I just kept going on and I didn't form any kind of pattern. I just randomly wrote down numbers. That's an irrational number. All right?